Indie Beacon Radio with host B Alan Bourgeois. Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Hi, this is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and I have with me Michael Earney, who has written a lot of books on a variety of subjects and genres. Welcome, Michael.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. So we're going to talk in this segment about your A to Z books. The first one you did was A to Z of Birds. So let's start off with that. What got you motivated to write those type of books, and tell us about it.
It's always difficult to come up with what really was the motivation. What did get me into it was the fact that at the time, when I did not have a studio. I'd been out of the country, I was back, didn't have a studio, but I had a little can of watercolors. And of course, I wanted to do something. And so I used those watercolors and started that A to Z book of birds. It may be that because I was staying at my son's house, who is an avid birder, that was the motivation. It's lost in the midst of time now. But that's probably something like that.
So you're an artist in general, and you just decided to start working on some watercolors of birds.
Correct, yes.
And that just kind of grew from, okay, what are the birds? And you just kind of put them in order and did some research to find out what they were and what their lives were like or something?
Exactly, yeah. Once I had decided it was going to be A to Z, I then decided I was going to do one bird per letter of the alphabet, and started with A, of course, and worked my way through I decided the albatross was going to be for A. So of course I did research on the albatross. And the thing with all of these books is that I realized that I won't go into in detail, but I edit things down. And so this format of getting as much information on one page, making it as enjoyable and interesting as possible, was something that this particular book, the Birds book, started that format. And since then, that's the format that I've followed on all the other A to Z books.
So I bet it was a challenge as you're learning all about these birds to really narrow it down to a short, simple, easy page of information.
Well, it is, of course. You have to be selective. You have to decide what interests you in the first place is the motivation. Because if I'm not interested in it, I don't expect to be able to get other people interested in it. But I am interested in birds, and once you start, it's all the other subjects too. Once you start in doing your research, of course, it gets more and more interesting, but you do have to decide what you're going to put in and what you're going to leave out and make it flow and be interesting. And that's the pleasure really in doing the whole thing.
So I'm sure there's some typical birds within your book. Did you ever choose to throw something in that was just totally different and off the wall that most people may not be aware of?
Well, again, because you're tied to the alphabet, you have to come up with a bird that goes with that letter. Now, Q was the quetzal, and maybe not too many people know about the quetzal. I was trying to stick to birds of this hemisphere, so it fitted in there. But the one that I had the most trouble with was X, which is usually the case with most of these books. But I just decided I was going to do X for extinct and put the dodo in there.
Interesting. Okay. I see. When you said Q, I thought of quill.
Yeah.
So you did something different in that respect. So that's good. So from that, you then created, actually behind you, I believe, is the A to Z birds. If you could let people see that. Yeah. And so from that, you then created the A to Z of weeds and other useful plants, or was it the other one?
No, the weeds was the next one, yes. And again, part of the reason I did that is because I already had quite a few paintings that I had done of wild edible plants. And so in the taking some of my old paintings and working them into a new thing seemed like a good idea to me, of recycling, so to speak. And so it got me off to a much quicker start that way, since I had, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly how many I had already painted. I'd painted them some years earlier for a project that was going to be a wild plants of Texas calendar, which I was working on with a guy who was a botanist. So he was going to write all the text, but he dropped out. So of course I didn't have the text, but I had the paintings. And then when I started to use them in A to Z of weeds and other useful plants, it's important to get that other useful plants, because people think weeds, huh? That was when I had to write again all the information that I got from whatever source I could. I had, again, some years ago, provided some drawings for a book by a lady. It was actually a book that was printed by Texas Monthly Press, and I provided some of the drawings for the plants in that. So it wasn't that big of a leap to get into the A to Z of weeds and other useful plants.
We have a couple minutes left of this segment. You still have 3 other books, I believe, of A to Z of something. So quickly tell us about the other 3.
Okay, well, after the A to Z of weeds, I did the A to Z of wildflowers, which again, I had a couple of those already done. That came about because I was selling books down at the Botanical Gardens in Corpus Christi, and the director there said, "Oh, I wish there was a book on wildflowers like this." So of course, I had to go home and make one. So that was the next one. And then what was the next one I did? Well, I did the A to Z of Did You Know, which is this one here. Now that one is different in as far as, although I have a couple of my paintings in there, it's mostly stock pictures, copyright-free images. So, and again, because there's more than one subject per page, there's more than one picture per page, usually 3 or 4 pictures. But that's the variation. That's the one that's unlike the rest of them. But then after that, I did the A to Z of mushrooms, which you'll see back behind the birds. And that again, I like mushrooms. I'd done maybe a couple of mushroom paintings in the past, so I launched into that one. And the research is difficult, and one has to be particularly careful with mushrooms, because most people think that all mushrooms are poisonous. And the other thing that I'd like to mention is that I think it might have been with, no, I think it was with the Weeds book that I started doing a poem at the beginning of each of the books. And so now that's what I do. The book starts with a poem and then get into the text after the introduction. Now, in between that and the wildflowers, I had done that book of my mask paintings through Blurb some years ago, and it wasn't very satisfactory. And of course, it didn't have an ISBN, so I couldn't sell them. They cost a fortune. So I decided it was time to put it into another format, like this format, the 8.5 by 11, and used Erin Gobra Publishing, which is now my publisher for all of my books. Now, I will say that this week, sometime when I go into Utopia, I will go and collect copies that I've been waiting for over a month for, of the A to Z of Cats, which is my next one. It's Cats, Wild and Domestic. This again is a variation as far as I decided that I started doing the paintings, and then I thought it might be a good idea to approach the art department in the school in Utopia to see if some of the students would like to do paintings of cats. Unfortunately, it was summer, so they were closed, but I contacted the director of the library in Uvalde, and he said, yes, he would love to have it as one of his summer programs, because he puts on summer programs for kids in the library. And so I did a couple of classes there, and kids did paintings and drawings, and I included as many as I could in the A to Z of cats. So it's a combination of my paintings and their paintings, which I'm very happy with.
Wonderful. Well, we've covered all the A to Z books, and this is a perfect time for us to take a break and listen to our sponsors. We'll come back, we'll talk about your young adult books, your fiction books, and other things you've got going on. We'll be right back.
Very good. Very good. Thanks.
I'm Rox Berkey.
And I'm Charles Brakefield. We're award-winning co-authors, Brakefield and Berkey, of the Enigma book series. There are 10 books in the series, with book number 11 planned for release in January 2020.
Each story has a central technology focus ranging from identity theft to cryptocurrency and now AI wars. These adult techno thrillers pit cyber good guys against cyber thugs across the darknet.
In our world, technology is today's weapon of choice. You can enjoy ebook format, paper, or Audible. We want your feedback.
Until the next story, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, hello there, my friends. My name is Randy James, independent voiceover producer in the Dallas, Texas area, available to write and record a 30-second commercial, much like the one you're hearing right now. It's a great way to help increase awareness and exposure to your book title. It's easy to do. Simply call me and we'll brainstorm on a few ideas, and in a few hours, I'll whip something up and send you a digital file ready to use. Remember, call or text me, Randy James, at 214-762-1942.
Welcome to IndieLector.store, an online bookstore where the discriminating reader can find award-winning books. IndieLector.store is not a big corporation, so we can give up to 80% of the sales directly to the author. Help us support them by buying a great book at IndieLector.store.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Talk about the A to Z that I'm working on right now, but we can do that right before we do the source for the books. I'm going to stress that Indie Lector is the place to go to get them.
Okay.
But of course they are, and that they are available on Amazon. Do you mention Ingram Spark? Because that's where wholesalers get, people who want to buy them wholesale can get them, right?
Right. If you want to, you're welcome to. Mostly it's just Amazon and our store, simply because most of the people watch our readers versus.
True, yeah. But hopefully there might be somebody who has a store that would like to buy more than one. I did sell some the mushroom books to a store last week, as a matter of fact.
Good. Okay.
So,
all right. You ready to start?
I'm ready.
All right. And welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois. We're talking with Michael Earney, who has a collection of books. In the first segment, we were talking about all of his A to Z books, and now we're going to talk about a few other things. So, Michael, one of the things that interests me is your Magic Faces. So tell us about that book.
Okay. Magic Faces started as a series of paintings that I did of Mexican masks. And that took me a year, maybe longer. And then when they were exhibited, they were first exhibited at the, what's it called? The Mexican Embassy Museum down in San Antonio. And they asked me if I could put little things by the side of the painting that would say a little bit about the painting. So I did that. And then they started translating them into Spanish. Then I took the paintings down to Zacatecas for an exhibit down there in the Municipal Palace, and they did more translations of Spanish. So then I had, when I came back, I had pretty much all of them in English and Spanish. So I decided to expand on them and get people to translate them into Spanish. And so I brought out that book with the text, again, one picture of a painting, and then the text about that particular painting in English and Spanish. As I said, that I published it, self-published through Blurb, and they turned out a book that cost me like $120 to get. So there's no way I could sell it. But say recently I decided I would bring out a new edition, which is now being published by Earney. And in fact, it's interesting because the reproductions are actually better than they were in the Blurb book. Even though the Blurb was a 12 by 12 book, the reproductions really weren't that good. And now in this 8.5 by 11, the reproductions are very good. So I'm happy about that.
Good. Now you've written some fiction books too. So tell us about those.
All right. The fiction, even though I've yet to publish it, I started this book, which I called The Messenger at the time. It's now called Master of the Stars. Excuse me. And it's a science fiction come historic fiction book. I've yet to show it to anybody, but at some point in time, I will put it out there. But in the meantime, I started on a detective story. Don't ask me why I did that, because I don't read detective stories. But it's a detective story that takes place in Corpus Christi and Port Aransas. And I was quite pleased with it. It's really a novella, lengthwise. And I had written a short story that's called R.I.P. That just came out of nowhere also. And so I combined that with Corpus and published that. Since then, I have done another detective story using the same detective, and also takes place in Corpus, Wimberley, and Padre Island. It's called Be Not Deceived. I think you might see that up there somewhere. No.
Right, there it is on the bottom.
Right over my shoulder. And before that, I'd written a book called Agla and Kevin. This came out of my living out on a big ranch outside of Blanco. I had read and was interested in, well, a friend of mine was thinking about making a film about the Ushi, yes, the last of a particular Yaqui Indian tribe in California, who his band of Indians had gone back up into a canyon when the gold diggers came. They fled up there and stayed up there. Nobody knew they were there, but they slowly died out because there was no contact with the other tribes or anything like that. So he was Ishi is his name, I'm sorry. Finally, he came down because he was beginning to starve, and he became quite a star in the museum in I think it was in Berkeley. So that was the inspiration for Agla and Kevin. In this case, a little kid who's out on a hunting expedition with his uncle and some friends, runs off, gets lost, and is taken in by this tribe of Indians who, again, have retired up into a canyon up there in the hill country since the Spanish came through. So, that was an interesting book to do, because again, I had to do some research about Indians of Texas and what happened with the the Mexicans coming in, or the Spanish coming in first, of course, then the Mexicans, then the the English settlers moving in, and how that affected Texas and the way that the land is dealt with. So it happens in today, in this time. And so the book finishes with saying that they're still up there in the hill country somewhere, and they'll be there as long as they can. But of course, at some point in time, they're likely to die out because there's no new blood coming in, except for Kevin, who's the white boy that comes along and joins them.
That's quite an interesting collection. From the detective story to the Indians to all the A to Z stuff you do and things of this nature. All of these required some form of investigation, some kind of research and stuff like that. So is that something you really enjoy doing?
Yes, it is. I guess I'm just curious about things, about the world in general. And again, I think that my work in documentary film was the beginning of that kind of thing, because when you're doing a documentary, you have to know as much as you can about the subject and the people that you're dealing with. And the same applies to these A to Z books, maybe on a lesser level, but it still requires a considerable amount of research.
So the obvious question then, all this research, is it leading you to something new, or are you getting ready to start a new venture on another subject, another book, or anything of that nature?
Well, I have started on another A to Z, and it's A to Z of Turtle Island, which is about the Native Americans and their history. What happened, well, when people first came into we now call the Americas, and what happened, of course, when the English and the Spanish and the French kind of invaded the Americas. And so it's in a way, it's incredibly interesting. It's very, very difficult to pare it down to one page, of course, because you're talking about thousands of years of history. But I'm doing that, and I think I'm being fairly successful.
Okay. Are you, in any of your books, do you give references to places where people can learn for themselves more information about plants or whatever it is you're working on?
Yes, I do a bibliography at the end, and I am including websites. In this case, most of the tribes have their own websites, so I'm including their websites. And every book that I look at, and of course, Wikipedia is my big source, YouTube. So people can find those things there. They just have to put the name of the tribe in them. Bingo, up it comes.
Great. Well, this is the perfect time for us to stop and let our sponsors do their thing. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching or listening to Indie Beacon Radio. Our sponsor, IndieLector.store, is the only bookstore that pays authors their fair share for book sales. Help authors to succeed and enjoy a great book by supporting them at IndieLector.store. Enjoy a 10% discount with coupon code SHOPPER20 at IndieLector.store. Coupon valid until December 31st, 2020. That's IndieLector.store, coupon code SHOPPER20.
What started as a love letter to her son has become an international love letter for all parents to their children. Now you can read acclaimed author Shanalee Charbonneau's story to your children. When her son was very sick, she calmed him by singing her own song to him. She turned that song into the book, My Mama Loves Me, I'm Her Little Boy. She wrote 3 more magical books for all parents and kids 6 and under. Available at Indie Lecter, Amazon, and all local and national outlets.
Authors Marketing Guild is a membership-owned organization designed to help authors succeed and learn how to better market and sell themselves and their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com and receive so many benefits you'll wonder why you didn't join sooner. That's authorsmarketingguild.com.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
And welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois. We're talking with Michael Earney in this episode of the Indie Beacon Show. And Michael's talked about all of his A to Z books, his mask, his fiction stories, and things that he's working on. So the obvious question now, Mike, is where can people find your books?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Indie Lecter is the best. Indie Lecter store, I think, is the best place to find them because it not only helps me get them out there, but it helps Texas authors in general and Texas Authors Association. Of course, they're all available on Amazon. Ingram Spark for stores and people who want to buy them wholesale. And of course, Earney being the publisher, can also be contacted for them. In fact, recently sold a dozen or so of mushrooms, A to Z of mushrooms, and the person that bought them did contact, or I think I may have put them in contact with Earney and they had them printed and then shipped them out. So those are possibilities. Now, aside from my books, of course, I have my paintings. And even though on my website, I have 2 websites, www.earneyworks and www.michaelearney.com. So my books and my paintings are on there, but I have my paintings on Fine Art America, which, if you know about Fine Art America, they will do prints of anything that you have up there. Not only will they do prints, they will print your work on almost anything that you can buy. Shower curtains, duvets, tote bags. I've had some of my things done on tote bags, which I take to festivals when I go. And they do greetings cards. So I've got almost all of my paintings on greeting cards also, which I sell. That's about it as far as
well, let me ask you
sales are concerned. But
you've written all these A to Z books and stuff. So I'm sure some schools or libraries have asked you to come and talk about this stuff. So how can they reach out to you to get you to do that, come in and speak?
Well, of course, I have, my websites have my information. I think I have my phone number and my email address, which is themichaelearney@yahoo.com. And yes, my phone number's there, my email and my phone number are both on the website. So if people go to my website, they'll find all that information.
And on your website, people can also check out your social media accounts?
I don't know if there's a link to Facebook there, but I do have a Facebook account. I have 2 Facebook accounts. One is Michael P. Earney, which is my publisher's name. And then I have another one, which is just Michael Earney. Both, they're interactive. I post stuff on both of them generally at the same time. But my books, of course, are particular to the Michael P. Earney.
Okay, great. Well, this is the end of the show. I want to thank you very much for your time, and we wish you the best of luck.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity to come on, and I wish every author the best of luck.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website.
Indie Beacon Radio with the host, B Alan Bourgeois.
Indie Beacon Radio is produced by B Alan Bourgeois for Authors Marketing Guild LLC, copyright 2020. Voiceover by Randy James, Lydia Bello, and B Alan Bourgeois. To be a sponsor of the show or for more information, please email us at info@authorsmarketingguild.com. To be interviewed for the show, please complete the form at radio.authorsmarketingguild.com. Music Always Rejoice by Ramcord